Okay, welcome everybody. Welcome back to the show. Justin Chose here. I got a very special guest today. We were just kind of talking off air before we jumped on here that when I had the idea of starting this podcast and bringing all this information to everybody, Colton Lukey was one of the first names that kind of came to mind. Why it comes to mind, someone that I really envious. He's gone from working the 9-to-5 corporate world type of a job, taking that, starting to invest in real estate. And now, as he calls it, we'll touch on your YouTube. I see it all over there that you're essentially retired. I don't even know how old you are, but retired somewhere around the age of 30, which is wonderful news. And it's a very unique story. So I'm excited to have you here, Colton. Welcome to the show.
Awesome. Yeah. Thanks, Justin. Happy to be here. And just so everyone knows, Justin is a wealth of knowledge. He definitely was a pillar in my success when I first started out, understanding mortgages and kind of getting that snowball rolling. So I also want to thank you and for allowing me to be on your podcast.
Yeah, no, thank you, Colton. Like I said, it was a pleasure to work with you and your wife as well through the process, right? I mean, great questions. There's no reason to not think that you are where you are, because you are always educating yourself, asking all the right questions, to make sure that you are armed to kind of continue to move forward. So, as everybody knows, my goal in providing all of this information and having these different guests on is to show you that mortgage is not a dirty word, right? Mortgage is a very, very valuable tool. And when used properly, should be used as a retirement planning tool, help you build wealth and help you and your family accomplish all of your financial goals and put you on a path to a better financial future. So as we jump into it here, Colton, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. Yeah. So as Justin mentioned, my name is Colton Lukey. My wife and I have been investing in real estate since 2016. Started out with just your basic 1960s bungalow with 2 units, lived in a basement, rented out the upstairs, and that has snowballed into a multi-million-dollar portfolio, which allowed us to both leave our 9-to-5 jobs at the ages of 28. So I have been, I guess, financially independent or retired, whatever you want to call it, for going on 3 years now. And my wife, who's a couple years younger than me, is now a year in to her, I guess, early retirement. And so with that, in short, we are real estate investors. We have a YouTube channel where we date stocks and just our financial freedom journey in hopes we can provide value to those individuals who want to reach financial independence sooner.
Very good. So you offer help to people and all of that as well, like a coaching? Did I understand that?
We don't really do coaching. Honestly, it's something that I probably should offer more of. But I just really enjoy giving out as much free content as possible via YouTube, recording a 5 to 10 minute video and then putting it out there so people can see it, learn more, and hopefully piques their interest or gives them value to accomplish their financial goals. So we the journey first started prior to 2016, buying our first property. What it really was is we put the education in first by watching YouTube videos, reading books, everything like that. And that was, I really got an inclination of real estate investing in college in 2013, but it wasn't until 2016 where we actually purchased our first property. And I think that first property is going to be your scariest because it's the unknown, right? Even though I did a lot of research and due diligence about real estate investing, it's a whole different thing when you actually sign the dotted line and all of a sudden you're on the hook for, a couple $100,000 worth of debt. But once you get past that first one, that's when you really start to trust the process. And that first property was purchased in Welland, Ontario. It was solely in my name. And the reason for that is because we want to take advantage of the 5% down as a first-time home buyer. And what we did is we bought the 1960s bungalow. We put a basement apartment in. We lived in the basement apartments, and then we rented out the upstairs. So we were living for free. And I really think that is, if you're not a high earner, like we never made more than $50,000, $60,000 from our day jobs, that is like a key pillar to our success, was house hacking and being able to live for free, save as much money as possible, because then a year or two down the road, we were able to save up enough money to then do it again, right? So I think out there for you is that take advantage of the first-time home buyer, 5 to 10% down. Try and find a 2 to 4 unit property where you can live for free. And if you have a spouse, if you're not married, you can do it twice. right? So that is, you can own two properties for very little money, which can just snowball so much faster your financial growth. And from there, what we did is exactly what I mentioned earlier. We waited, we saved up more money, and we took equity out of the property, and we bought a duplex property, except this time it was with a joint venture partner. And then we just continued that process with a couple more joint venture partners, and snowballed into, I think before we sold everything and moved out east, I believe we had 12 rental properties total, including our primary residence, which was a duplex.
Very good. So two questions I have that kind of come out of that there, Colton. One of the things that I find is very unique is everybody thinks that you need to be a first-time home buyer to take advantage of the 5% down, right? I know when we had worked together, it was wonderful. Again, kind of watching you do it and knowing how it all worked is yes, if you buy a house with 5% down, right? So you buy your first house with 5% down, which is the minimum down payment, you can move into that house. Now you and your now wife, we're living in that house, kind of let equity kind of build up. And then over time, again, I believe we had refinanced that property, which gave you another 5% to go move to the next property, which was, again, you bought that house with 5% down because you were living in that, right? So and then we had done the same thing with Allie, your now wife. So there was a couple properties you were able to get into for very little capital. It was just kind of getting that initial down payment, correct?
Yeah, that's all it was. And that initial down payment really just came from working my ass off, right? Like we just worked 2-3 jobs while in college and while we were, at our first jobs out of college, we just saved everything we could. And then once that first house was a house hack, well, now all of a sudden we weren't paying for shelter, which takes up most of people's budgets, right? So all of a sudden now we were saving an extra 30 or 40% of our income just for living in a basement apartment, renting out the upstairs. So that was the first snowball effect, right? Was that first property. But to get to that first property, it's really just work as hard as you can, save as much money as you can, and just get it done. Because once you're going to learn so much, you're going to pick up some good saving habits and financial habits by doing that as well. And that's going to follow you throughout your financial journey. Yeah,
great point. I think that's key. I think everyone kind of wants to get into that forever home right at the start. And it's good to kind of see you kind of on your journey and how you've done it. You started with a goal of, hey, we wanted this. I don't even know, you probably didn't have that at the time, kind of where you are now, but we want this lifestyle at the end of it. And I think people kind of do it the opposite, right? They want the big, nice, shiny, new stuff, white picket fence, these beautiful homes that are your end home, right? Or your forever home, and forget kind of the roots and kind of where to start, right? So again, you had done it the right way, started, kind of got in, again, me and my wife say it all the time. One of the biggest mistakes, if we were to go back, we didn't do that, right? We were in love and we needed to move into a house together, right? Whereas, going back and doing it again, would have done the same idea, got a duplex, she'd do exactly the same thing, and then kind of combine it. And we have friends that have done that, and the wealth they've generated is incredible, right? Just by a couple years of, I wouldn't even say roughing it, just a couple years of doing what everybody should be doing, right? So you still have a roof over your head.
And for us, it wasn't as much like we couldn't afford our own home, right? I think when we bought the first home, I was making like 14 or like $16 an hour, right? Like I was not a high earner on that first property, but so we were forced to kind of find a property where we could live in. And for us, it was, what's the difference of renting an apartment where we have people living on top of us, below us, beside us, or just buying a duplex and we're living in the basement and just renting out the upstairs. Then we own it, right? So there's no difference, but we just found out, okay, wait, we can actually live for free. We can own the asset. And it's really the exact same thing as just going and renting an apartment. Because people did call us crazy, right? Like, well, why are you? I could never live with tenants or anything like that. But they'll live in a 300-unit condo building. It's no difference, right? Like they'll rent for
right. That's a good point. Yeah.
There's no difference, but if you do it this way, it just made more financial sense to us, and that's why we did it, and that's what gave us a huge starting point and towards financial freedom.
Yeah, awesome. So another thing you kind of touch on there, part two of that, is you'd mentioned the word joint venture, right? Can you kind of touch base on how what joint venture means, how it works, maybe some of the risks, and how you protect yourself from some of those risks. So what's a joint venture, and how does it work, and how did that help you scale your portfolio?
Yeah, so in simple terms, a joint venture is just a partnership between you and another person, or potentially a couple other investors. So for us, it was me and then my realtor, who we were both had the same goal, where we wanted to buy rental properties. We were both around the same age, and we found this one property in St. Catharines, and we said, well, we can't really afford it on our own, but if we get together and do it, we can afford it, and then we have another asset, we can split everything. So what it was a simple 50-50. So if you have a friend, a relative, colleague, whatever it is, you can go buy a property and you each just split right down the middle, 50-50. So for us, we 50-50 down payments, 50-50 closing costs, 50-50 renovation costs. And then I took a unit, he took a unit in terms of management from tenant calls. And then we split 50-50 the cash flow. It was just a very simple thing. One thing I would recommend was make sure you have everything in writing. We didn't have a disagreement ever, but just hearing horror stories from other people, definitely have everything in writing between you and your joint venture partner. That way, it's just very clear, right, what it is. But in very short and simple terms, that's all a joint venture partner is. And that allowed us, again, to both get into a property, which we couldn't afford on our own, but when we put things together, we could afford it. And we repeated the same process. We renovated it, we rented it out, and we pulled the equity out of that one. And then we repeated the same thing 2 more times with each other, right? And that now went from 1 property to 3, and multiple units paying us each and every month.
Very good. Very good. So it started with 1, got to 2, you did a joint venture. So explain kind of where you're at now, and where, what was that timeline, from when you started? I think you said, was it 2016 was the first purchase? Is that what you had said?
Yeah, so in 2016 was the first purchase. 2017, we didn't purchase anything because we were renovating that first property and we were building up equity and cash. And then 2018 is when I did the first joint venture. And then 2019, we bought 2 more properties. So that puts us at 4, or maybe about 3, or I can't remember. Honestly, I can't. I think by end of 2019, I think we had 6 or 7 properties.
Yeah, that's a good problem, right? When you start kind of losing count of stuff, and
that it's starting to lose memory. But then 2020, when the world essentially shut down, was to us like one of the greatest opportunities, because we were blessed that we were able to have all this equity from the other previous 5 or 6 or 7 rental properties in our bank account. We pulled equity out, and everybody was terrified of buying because no one knew what would happen. Just being confident with real estate and thinking that, whatever this is going on right now, it's probably going to pass just like everything else. We just kept buying real estate, and competition was very, very low between, I would say, March of 2020 till about September, right? Even though rates dropped, people were still very hesitant. But we were able to buy 5 properties in 2020, and those consisted of duplexes and triplexes. And we just repeated the same process: buy under market, renovate them, pull equity out. And we just repeated that process throughout 2020 and 2021. So now all of a sudden we're 5 years into the journey, and that's where we had, I would say by the end of early 2021 is where we had the 12 properties, but that's when we had a major change in focus, which we can get into later, or if you want, we can get into it now. Up to you.
Yeah, no, let's roll with it. Why don't you tell us why, so you say you changed focus. So tell us what that change of focus was, and let us all know why, right? I mean, things were rocking and rolling pretty good for you, right? So why would you change something that's broken?
So for me, it just came down to, if it doesn't work on paper, it doesn't work at all. So we all of a sudden saw properties go up 100, sometimes 200% in the span of 8 to 12 months, right? Like you saw that in St. Catharines and Niagara region. It was essentially across Canada. Things were just getting ridiculous. And I've always been interested in economics and just understanding the basics on how an economy works. When they started talking about how inflation went from 1.6% to 3% to 5% to 8%, knowing a little bit about finance just from research, I realized that sooner or later, they're going to have to do what they did in past history, which was raise interest rates, right? And tighten lending. And again, this just came from prior just education, right? Of understanding how economics works. And so what we did was we decided that halfway through 2021 to start liquidating our Ontario holdings. And the reason for that was because in April of 2021, we began buying out east, where prices were in half, but rents were going up and up and up. So we saw this opportunity of populations moving there. We have much more affordable housing, and we have rents that are increasing. So where we'd have to buy a $400,000 to $600,000 duplex in Niagara and maybe cash flow $200 or $300, we were buying a $100,000 duplex in Nova Scotia and cash flowing $800, right? So we saw this and we said, we're done with Ontario. We think this market is topped out, and we just slowly started selling all of our properties in Ontario one at a time, and the last one closing in June of 2022. And so did we get lucky with the timing? I think yes, but a lot of people didn't see the basic fundamentals of how an economy works. And for us, it was just one of those things where it made sense to us. And we came out here in 2021 in the summertime after buying a couple properties sight unseen, just with networking with individuals. And we fell in love with it. And we said, you know what, this is where we're going to live. So let's find a house. And we ended up moving out here in full time in March of last year. So 2022. And just been buying very aggressively here in Nova Scotia, but instead of the duplexes and triplexes, now we're buying 6, 8, and 12 unit buildings. Right now we are looking at 17 units to be purchased and hopefully closing at the end of August potentially. And then we already have a 24 unit deal lined up for after that.
Very good. Very good. Well, good for you. That's quite the journey. A lot of movement there, and it's nice to see it kind of. And I think that's important for people to understand too, right? Is just because you're headed down one path, always kind of be open and pay attention to changes in that and look for opportunity, right? Which is what you've done and been able to pivot, right? So you say you're retired. We're all kind of envious of that term. So why don't you walk us through kind of what your day-to-day looks like, right? Like, what does retired mean? Like, I think of retired, I think of sitting on my front porch with a cardigan on and rocking in a rocking chair, right? And drinking my Diet Coke in a small glass with ice. So why don't you walk us through kind of what retirement means for you, and what does your day-to-day look like now?
Yeah, so retirement for me just means that I am not dependent on a job income. So we don't have 9-to-5 jobs. I don't have to worry about going in. I don't have to worry about sick days. I don't have to worry about just the day-to-day BS that you have to put up with a 9-to-5 job. So that's part of it for me. But also just the freedom that if we just want to take a few days off and go, like we just went to PEI for 3 days, right? I don't think we could have just randomly, we decided Thursday night we were going to go, and Friday morning we left. Like, I don't think that's something you could really do on a 9-to-5 job. So it's just the freedom of being able to have 100% of your time back and do whatever it is you want to do on a day-to-day basis. Now, what does my day consist of now? A lot of people think that retirement is just, sitting on a beach or in your rocking chair with a cardigan on, drinking Diet Coke. But for me, it's just, again, having control of your time, but working on things that are important to you, right? So for us, we're still actively buying real estate. We're not managing the real estate. So we have third-party property managers that take care of all of our properties. There is still work that we have to do for that. We still have to make sure that, they're keeping things on the ball for our properties. We're following up with renovations and stuff like that, but we're not doing the physical work ourselves. All that is, handed out to someone else. And then a good part of our day is just looking for the next deal, right? So rather, we spend hours online trying to find new deals, talking with investors, talking with brokers, driving around, looking for properties. And then another thing is I really enjoy helping people with financial freedom and achieving their financial goals. So I do YouTube. I try to make 2 to 3 videos a week. if my schedule allows for it. Yeah, that's kind of what the day looks like. It's not sitting in a rocking chair, but it's everything we want to do, right? Whatever we want to do on a day-to-day basis, we can essentially do it.
Yeah. No, I know that's a passion of yours. I remember a post that you had posted 4 or 5 years ago where it was, I think I don't know the exact number, but it was a very realistic goal. And I think it was like, my goal for whatever the year it was, 2019, is to have 500 YouTube subscribers. I just remember you posting that there was something along those lines, and buying 2 properties and doing all that stuff. And I think you had posted it kind of at the end of the year saying like, hey, we look at the check marks. And it was kind of like on a napkin or a piece of paper that you could tell you had looked at and used a lot. And I thought that was super cool because I remember it being realistic. I can't remember if it was 500 or 1,000, which YouTube subscribers, which is, if people understand what that task is, that is an enormous task to get those. And what are you at now, Colton?
We're just over 28,000 now,
which is insane. And I commend you for that, because that means that, you know, the message you're putting out, the life experiences that you're sharing are resonating with people, and it's real life and it's real, right? I also know that you've written a book too. Have you not?
Yes, actually. Yeah. Right here. It's called Your First House to Financial Freedom, a step-by-step guide. 64 pages. That's all it is. And all I wanted to do was dumb down buying your first house, right? To as the simple terms as possible from, point A to point B. That's all it is. And we've sold a lot of, I think a couple hundred of these so far. And it's available on Amazon. I do give them away randomly for free throughout the year. I just put random things on my Instagram and saying, first person to do this, I'll send them a free book. So keep an eye on that if you are interested, but it is available on Amazon. And again, I just really enjoy trying to help people as much as possible, right? And for me, there's no better satisfaction than having someone reach out to me and go, just thank you for what you've told me, because I was able to buy 3 or 4 properties. Like I had someone reach out from high school a few weeks back, and they were like, I didn't believe you 5-6 years ago, but then I started believing you 3 years ago, and I've been implementing what you've been saying, and now I own 6 properties and I'm on my way to early retirement. It's like, that is just like, there's no better feeling than that, right?
Yeah, super cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. So what would you tell anyone that's looking to invest or get into the market, or, we're obviously in a very unique market right now, even a first-time home buyer, like what would you tell, whether it's a first-time home buyer that's kind of on the fence, or someone who has a house that's thinking of investing, what type of advice would you give them?
So for that first-time home buyer, I would say house hacking. Like, buy a house where you can rent out part of it and reduce your mortgage costs. There was nothing, to me, if you're a first-time home buyer, do that, because you're going to thank yourself down the road. For that individual who maybe owns a property now, is looking to buy, the next property, I think there's a lot of good opportunities right now, because a lot of properties are sitting, but you just have to make sure that your numbers work. And it's important, if you need reassurance, it's important to talk to people like myself or like you, Justin, who can double check numbers, can run realistic numbers. But then also, for that individual, if I was to go back, and from what I know now, after getting the first property or 2, I would stop wasting time on that duplex or triplex, and I would go right into like a 6-unit and up, because it takes the same amount of work, no matter what, to buy a duplex, to buy a 6-unit. But to me, I find it a lot easier to qualify under commercial lending than it is to qualify for residential lending, which is under 40 years.
It is, yeah. A lot of people don't realize that, right? So yeah. I mean, that's a completely different topic, and we can have a whole show and whole discussion on that for sure. But I do, again, just everyone kind of keep their minds open when they're looking at different possibilities, and discuss what your goals are, long-term goals, and work with a professional, like ourselves, where we'll tailor it to help you accomplish those goals.
Yeah. And just share your message, share your journey, right? Like, you brought up that thing where I posted my goals. It kept me accountable, right? And I still do that today. I'm not as frequent as posting on Instagram as much as I used to be, but Yeah, I still write down my goals every year, and they change, and some of the goals I don't get to achieve that year, but I'm still working towards them. Like I have a lofty goal now where I want to have 1,000 units. Like that's my goal, right? 1,000 rented units. Am I going to get there? I know one day I will, but I'm probably not going to get there in the time span that I've written it out for. But share that, right? And just surround yourself with people who are better than you or have the same goals and objectives as you.
Right. No, I completely agree. So in kind of wrapping things up, Colton, what would, is there anything we've missed? Is there anything else that you'd kind of like to add? Anything else you'd like to kind of add here to our viewers?
I think now there's a lot of stigma around like money and all that, right? Like we are growing up and you're not supposed to talk about money and all that. So like a very big taboo topic where I talked about money from a very young age, right? Because I wanted to learn as much about it as I wanted what the people with money had, right? I wanted freedom. I wanted to live in a nice house. I wanted to be able to vacation whenever I want, where I want, all that sort of stuff. So again, it really just comes down with surrounding yourself with the right people. If you are realizing that the people you're surrounding yourself with are going backwards where you want to go forward, and there's a lot of that, unfortunately, those people got to go. You got to let those people go, because trust me, you're going to find much better friendships as you grow and evolve. So that's a big thing that I see a lot of people struggling with nowadays, especially young individuals. And then in terms of real estate and financing, don't be scared. You have to invest your money. You're not going to retire by saving. The chances of your pension being there are very slim. So don't be scared of taking on good debt, mortgage debt and stuff like that. Don't be scared of investing in the stock market. Take a little bit of risk and you'll thank yourself later.
Great advice. I love all of that. I love the idea of surrounding yourself with positive people. I know that that's something, you know, in my 41 years of being around, you know, it's hard, right? It's hard when you got these, you know, friends or even family for that matter, that can really drag and bring you down, and to make a decision of like, you know what, that's kind of right, and that's not helping me obtain my goals and do that. And then like you said, take the risk on real estate. It is a safe one. We hear it all the time, right? Good thing about real estate is you can always sell it, right? So if you realize it's not for you or it's not the right property, as you've done, right? I mean, you've used that as a tool to kind of move on and change your path, but it's always something that you can sell to kind of help you obtain your goals. So I think that's great advice. So in wrapping everything up, I want to thank everybody. I want to thank Colton again. This is you were one of the first names I kind of wrote down in my notes section on my phone when I did it. So I love the story. It was great to kind of, you know, I was kind of in there at inception, which was super cool. You know, and kind of watch you evolve and kind of get to where you are now is very, very commendable. I'm good friends with your uncle as well, and I know he speaks very highly and very proud of everything you've done, and even he looks up to you as he's kind of continuing down his path. So it's super, super, super cool to watch. So what I'm going to do is so in the description below, what I'm going to do is I am going to put Colton's YouTube channel. I will put a link to his book as well, and then any other stuff, Colton, that you want to share, we'll put in there so that people can kind of follow you on that path to 1,000 units, which is going to be quite inspirational to kind of watch. So thanks again for joining us.
Not a problem. And just one more thing, Justin, the first person to comment down below, so that means you have to watch the whole thing. First person to comment down below, I will personally send them a copy of this book for free.
Love it. I appreciate that, Colton. Again, super love that you had the time. And to all the viewers, thank you very much for joining us. And again, you know, our goal here is to show everybody that a mortgage is not a dirty word. It is a very, very powerful tool when used properly to create wealth, to help you and your family obtain your goals, and to put you on a path to a better financial future. Thanks everybody for joining, and we'll see you on the next show.
Take care, everyone.